We are just going to give it a couple more minutes before we start, just to allow people to join. Right, okay, we'll get going. We'll keep you waiting. So thanks everyone for joining, and welcome to the Accounting's CIS Masterclass. We know that CIS can feel a little confusion, especially when it comes to the registration, deductions, deadlines, and the reporting requirements. So throughout the session, we'll be breaking everything down into a clear and practical way, helping you to understand your responsibilities and avoid any unnecessary penalties. You'll be hearing from client partner Saudi and senior accountant Katie, who will guide you through the key areas of CIS and answer some of the most questions that we hear from our clients. There'll also be time at the end for a Q&A, so if you want to pop any questions in the chat as we go along, that'd be great. With that said, let's get going. So Saudi, can you explain what CIS actually is?
So CIS stands for the Construction Industry Scheme. It's a ruling from HMRC where contractors have to deduct money from the subcontractors to put towards the subcontractors' tax and national insurance liability. It works very similar and actually alongside the pay-as-you-earn scheme as if you're employing an employee, where the pay-as-you-earn scheme deducts the tax and then you pay that towards HMRC for the individual in question. It does sort of put the subcontract into a negative cash flow position with HMRC because the tax liability is calculated based on what your actual payment is in terms of the labour. What the tax doesn't take into account is any expenses that you've had there. So it is quite important to look at the potential tax refund that you might be due back.
Great. And Katie, could you tell us who CIS would impact?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So for the construction industry scheme, or CIS, it's going to impact both contractors and subcontractors that operate within the construction industry scheme. It can either be if you've got a limited company or if you're just a sole trader, it can impact both. And you can also be a contractor as well as a subcontractor. And it usually just applies to general kind of construction work, such as building, repairing, demolishing and decorating structures as well.
Right. And Sally, how would I know if I needed to register for CIS?
So as a contractor, and if you are a contractor employing subcontractors and your trade is within construction, you have to register for CIS, there's no question about it. If you are a contractor employing subcontractors, but your main trade is in construction, you're just doing a project, but that project in question has made you spend over £3 million within a 12-month period, then again, yes, you have to register for CIS. As a subcontractor, you don't actually have to, but it is strongly recommended. So if you didn't register as a subcontractor, the deduction made towards your payment is actually 30%, whereas if you were registered, it would just be normally 20% unless you opt for a gross status, which we'll talk about later on. So do register.
Thanks for that. And how can I find out if my trade needs to be taxed via CIS?
Yeah, so you can kind of determine if your trade is within CIS. If you kind of go on the HMRC guidance online, they've got quite a good list of trades that would be fall within this, and then they've also got a list of ones that would be exempt as well. But if you are ever unsure or you still want kind of more guidance, probably advise seeking advice from a tax professional or accountant.
Right. And can I opt for a gross status to prevent CIS deductions?
So yes, you can, but HMRC do not make it easy to do so. So they'll look at 3 areas in question first before they sort of agree to it. So those 3 areas would be your trade, your turnover, and your compliance. So if you are in the UK and you're working on construction projects, then yes, you can. So you'd meet that requirement. If you are a sole trader, for your turnover, you have to at least have a £30,000 minimum turnover to be able to apply for it. Or if you are within a partnership or a limited company, if it's just an individual director or 2 partners, if those 2 partners / number of directors earn £30,000 each, again, yes, you can apply. Or as a company, if as a whole you are earning more than £100,000, then yes, you can do. Now, the compliance one is what draws the most attention towards from HMRC before they sort of accept it. So they'll look at your record, not just for CIS, but they'll look at it for self-assessment, for your corporation tax, and they'll want to make sure that you're filing on time and you're paying all your taxes on time. They'll at least look for the last 12 months, but they can look a little bit longer too. But it is worth noting that if you did opt for a gross status position and then you fall foul of these rules, HMRC do have the right to withdraw that gross status from you, and then you'd have to wait another 12 months before you can apply again. So just bear that in mind.
Thanks, Saudi. And how do I report CIS to HMRC?
So if you're a contractor and you're employing subcontractors, then you would have to do CIS based on monthly returns, which get submitted to HMRC. And these would detail the amounts that you've paid to the subcontractors, as well as the CIS that's deducted. You would get a payment and deduction status, which then you can pass on to the subcontractor. And that would need to be done by the required deadlines with HMRC, which we'll touch on in a bit later.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go on. Sorry, Katie.
Subcontractors who are self-employed, they would report the CIS deductions on the self-assessment, but obviously with the new kind of MTD rules that are coming in, depending on your turnover, you might have to register for MTD as well. Just be aware of that. So it's 50,000 for this tax year and then 30,000 for the next tax year. For limited companies that are subcontractors, that would get reported through your payroll system and through the EPS.
Super. And then how do I pay any CIS to HMRC?
So as a subcontractor, you actually have nothing to worry about. It's the contractor's duty to do the deduction and to make the payment towards HMRC. As a contractor, so it will work alongside your pay-as-you-earn payment that you make. So you'll be due to make that payment on the 22nd of each month, and you can pay via bank transfer. You can set up or you can pay it online if you just log into your gateway and pay that way, or what I recommend is setting up a direct debit. That way you don't have to worry about it at all.
Super. And what happens with my CIS deductions?
So if you're a sole trader, then you can put this on your self-assessment tax return, and this will be deducted from your overall tax bill. So if you've already paid more tax than you owe, then that can be refunded back to you as well. For limited companies, this can either be offset against your other taxes, such as if you've got pay-as-you-earn to pay, your VAT or your corporation tax. And again, if you can either opt to get it refunded back to the company as well.
Thanks, Katie. And then what are my deadline for CIS submissions?
So it's worth noting the sort of time periods that HMRC relate to with CIS. So it actually is based on the tax month. So it goes from the 6th of a month to the 5th of the following month. The deadline to actually file your CIS return is the 19th of each month, but the deadline to pay is the 22nd. In terms of penalties, if you are late in submission, you are going to have an immediate £100 penalty. If it goes more than 2 months late, you're looking at a £200 penalty. If it's 6 months, it's either going to be the higher of £300 or 5% of what tax was actually due. And if it goes 12 months, HMRC will start to look at why you're not making submissions and base a penalty on that. Because if it's deliberate, you're looking at potentially up to 100% more of what was due. So you'd be paying double the liability or another £300.
Okay. And do I need to do anything if I employ someone who is CIS registered?
Yes, if you're going to engage with someone who's a subcontractor and is CIS registered, then you would go by verifying the subcontractor, just making sure what deductions that you're going to make. So if they're registered, it's going to be at 20%, or if they're not registered, it's going to be at the higher rate of the 30%, or checking, as like we said before, that if they're on the gross status and then there's no CIS to be deducted, then you're going to have to report the payments and deductions through the monthly returns, and then you can provide the subcontractor with the payment and deduction statement as well.
Super. And what should a CIS invoice look like?
So this is quite important. We have seen a few issues arise in the past where invoices aren't correct. So it does look a lot like a standard invoice that you'd expect, where it's got the business details, company name, address, contact info, VAT numbers, and so on. You should look at also including your UTR number on there. Just to make sure that the details are all held. You want to include the contractor details in there. But the main thing really that we want to see is a line item description of what's going on in that invoice. So a lot of invoices we've seen include both labour and materials. We want to see that broken down clearly, purely because CIS is only in relation to the labour element of an invoice. The material elements, it doesn't really get taken into account. We want to see VAT on there if you are VAT registered, but the VAT, it's important to note, is a reverse charge, so it'll be added on and then deducted straight away. And then we want to see a CIS deduction amount based on the labour element only, not the materials as well.
Right. And if I'm CIS registered, do I also need to be VAT registered?
Yeah, so in terms of being VAT registered, it kind of depends on the business circumstances and your turnover. So if your turnover is going to exceed the 90,000, then you still have to be registered. So being CIS registered wouldn't impact that directly, but it all depend on kind of following on from what Sally said, is if it should be reverse charge or VAT charge, and it would all depend if you're invoicing the end customer. If it's not the end customer and you're supplying construction services to another VAT registered business, then it's going to be as reverse charge. So what we'd need to see is it clearly stating on the invoice that it's going to be reverse charge, and then the VAT would be paid and kind of accounted for by the end customer.
Perfect. It doesn't actually look like we've got any questions, and that comes to the end of the questions that we had planned. Does anybody have any questions? Don't think so. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the masterclass for today then. We hope it's helped you make the construction industry scheme clearer and give you a better understanding of how CIS works, from registration and gross payment status to deductions, payments, deadlines and invoicing. A big thank you to Katie and Saudi for sharing their knowledge and guidance. And if you do have any further questions or you need any support, there are some questions that seem to have popped in now. Sorry, if I receive an invoice from a subcontractor which shows VAT being charged, what do I do?
You need to get a new invoice, simply put. They shouldn't have charged you VAT more than likely. If it's just materials that you've paid for, and there's VAT on that, that's fine, that's separate. But if there is materials and labour involved, the whole invoice shouldn't have VAT applied on. It all should be reverse charge.
Great, thanks, Saudi. And I have a limited company and I am owed back CIS from HMRC. What do I need to do?
So either you can do it yourself, or if you get your accountant to do it, you can do it online, and there's like a form that you can fill out online in order to get the CIS refunded back to you. So again, we can either get that paid directly back to yourself, or if you want to offset it against your other taxes, so like your VAT, your corporation tax, or your pay-as-you-earn, you can do that as well, and HMRC will offset it against your other taxes.
Great. And how do I register for CIS is another question.
So it is all done pretty much on HMRC's government gateway. It should be hopefully fairly self-explanatory to sort of process yourself through there. But if you are struggling, get in touch and we can help you with it.
Right. And then a question on the VAT reverse. Is it just applied to just the labour or materials also?
It's applied to both.
Perfect. So I think that's it now. I think we've answered all of those questions as well. Yeah. So if you do need any help or further assistance, then the contact details can be found on the screen, or just give your accountant a chat. And thanks again for joining, and we hope to see you at the next masterclass.